Alright folks, what's shaking? It is time. 10.1 is going to drop. If you're like me, you're itching. It sounds like the patch is still probably 3 or 4 hours away. Patch day always hurts a little bit extra. So in the meantime, we're going to talk about our tier list going into patch 10.1. And we're going to start off actually today speaking about one of my favorite classes, Fire Mage. So unfortunately, Fire Mage actually just seen a 6% nerf to Ignite just before the PTR wrapped up here. So for those of you that aren't familiar, Ignite's a major part of the AoE damage, certainly the ticks that come along with it. Fire continues to be solid across the board next to that. It looks like we were just trying to reduce the amount of ticks that ultimately were resulting in a huge amount of AoE damage. Fire scales really well, so definitely as the keys get higher and your mobs or boss are going to last longer, those ticks that come from Ignite definitely start to add up to become a pretty substantial part of your overall group's damage. So we're still going to have combustion, we're still going to pump during those windows. Fire is doing a great job of knocking down priority targets, which is really good. It's really like the ranged version of Rogue. That's how I look at at our mage classes anyway. Ultimately, I think Fire is going to have a great damage profile in Mythic Plus again this upcoming season, where the keys are longer, or the keys are higher, and ultimately it takes longer to knock down mobs. I think it'll stand out more and more. Utility-wise, they bring Arcane Intellect, Dragon Breath, Ice Block. There's a whole bunch of things that mages bring. I think they're in a fantastic spot. Fire's still a bunch of fun. I'm going to throw this bad boy right up into A tier to start us off. And if you violently disagree with that, let me know down in the comments. So up next, we are going to talk about our friend, the Balanced Druid. So Balanced Druids are kind of again seeing another minor rework. Like, these aren't major reworks like what we've seen with Enhancement, but it's coming along. Really what we're seeing right now, there's some positive changes that are coming, and they're going to solve more issues than just create issues with the changes that Balance is going to be starting to receive this upcoming patch. And where that's exciting is because Balance has received reworks in the past, right? We've played with our Astral Power, we've played with Star Search, we've played with different abilities, but it would usually come at the cost of another ability. This time, we're moving towards more damage from dots, and then you're not going to get as punished for actually moving around, which is really critical for us in Mythic Plus. Stellar Flare is no longer the single AoE button we're going to press. Wrath and Starfire crits have been buffed. There's some of the ladder talents, so down at the bottom of the tree, that also got buffed. It's going to be punishing, and it's not going to feel good to lose the tier set from the Vault of the Incarnates. But overall, I actually think we're going to be a little surprised with how good Balance is going to be. The utility that they bring, the off heals, you've got Typhoon, you've got Cyclone, you've got all kinds of wicked things. It is fun to play Balanced Druid, so I'm throwing that up into A tier as well. Now, next up we're going to talk about Frost Mage. And Frost Mage, I'm going to tell you right now, did get a little bit of increased damage to their cleave build from their tier set, which is really going to help us in Mythic Plus. And it's actually probably going to open up some viability to try different builds. I really want to see us get back into the Cold Front build that we used to go with. But really, outside of the tier set and the cleave damage, Frost isn't gaining a ton of anything. They're still fantastic for single target damage. And in coordinated groups, when you can really set up your Icy Veins cooldown a little bit better, you're in a great spot. Defensively, like, Mage is probably underrated for how tanky it is. Everyone talks about Warlocks being tanky because of health stones and high health, but like, really, Mage has got a bunch of barriers. It's got ice blocks, so an immunity. There's a lot that Mage brings to the table as well. So for me, in Mythic Plus, I don't know if I'm like head over heels in love with Frost, but I think it's going to be probably the spec that I will consider off-speccing when I am playing Mage. But my go-to is definitely going to be Fire. That's kind of how it looks like it's sitting for Mythic Plus anyway. Up next, we're going to talk about Affliction Warlock. So our burst profile is a lot more accessible, but when you compare it to Demonology, you compare it to Destro, it's not quite the same. Affliction really kind of suffers. In seasons past, Affliction would really pump if you get a tank that could go with huge pulls, and they'd really be able to rain fire and really load up the damage meters. We're not really going to see that as much. If you think about Freehold or a few of these dungeons that we're going to be into, it's going to be a little bit slower. So for me, Warlocks bring a ton of utility. They're tanky as all hell, but Affliction is just the lowest of all the damage profiles that we're going to see. So that's where I'm starting with it. I know people might boo Affliction and C is a little hard to believe, but yeah, I'm not going to be spending a lot of time with Affliction personally. Kind of like Assassination Rogue for melee. It's just going to be the spec that I don't touch. Now, mixing it up a little bit, we're going to talk about Elemental Shaman. So, Elemental received a buff recently, and it does an even better job at its AoE damage. Its tier set is going to stack up really well with the build, and how the tier set's going to work, it's going to feed really nicely into Mythic Plus. Like, I'm really excited where Shaman is headed. Really, we're going to struggle a little bit with single target, but with our Earth Elemental, with our off heals, bringing Lust, bringing Totems, I think there's a ton of value coming with Elemental Shaman. For me, and this shouldn't be a huge shocker, I'm putting Elemental Shaman in the A tier. Where's my little lightning bolt hanging out at? Does this tier set not have any love for Shamans? Can I just not see it? It got me. Alright, Shaman's going right into A tier. Now I need to check my eyes a little bit to see. There it is. I was looking for lightning bolt, but it was the bloodlust symbol. I'll be okay. Up next, Devastation Evoker. So Devastation received a little bit of a build. On the PTAR, it's pumping out insane damage right now. It did receive a bit of a talent rework that it definitely needed, and the new tier set brings a lot of really nice passive damage. It's going to be, like, that tier set's going to be passively adding 10 minutes, 10% of damage in terms of what it is that we're looking to achieve. Now, there's a couple other items here. Definitely seeing a few more Lust classes, and that shouldn't be a big surprise around like what it is that Mage brings to the table. That's amazing. But I think that there's a few more items that we need to dig into here. So, as far as like Dragonflight abilities go, I was really hoping that Devastation was going to load up on a whole bunch of black Dragonflight abilities. It's probably the best way to say it. Like, really pull from that spec or faction of the Drakthir. Didn't necessarily do so. That's probably me, just more of a roleplay fantasy side that I like. From like a throughput side, I think Devastation's going to lead the pack. Like, it's absolutely going to do fantastic this tier. Just watch out. So up next is our big baddie, Shadow Priest. So Shadow Priest still isn't the Legion version of Shadow Priest, but it's getting another rework in 10.1. And from a numbers perspective, the tier set kind of plays into that Psychic Link gameplay and cleaves into surrounding enemies really well. Shadow's going to be blasting AoE. It's going to be topping the meters with the groups you're in. It's going to bring a fantastic 10% health priest buff. It's going to bring a lot of really fun, unique abilities. Their single target, again, won't be elite. Never really has been. But they'll continue to be great in keys, even pugs. Like, it's probably one of the more versatile groups. Shadow continues to bring power infusion. PI is just going to stack up your group's DPS. It's got a mass dispel that'll definitely prove to be helpful. It's worth its weight in gold. Honestly, it's got probably some of the best improvements I've seen outside of Retribution in terms of reworks here. We've got a trimmed down rotation, which feels really nice. We've moved and changed a lot of talents, but their AoE has really been changed to be Psychic Link focused, and the application of dots is minimal, so you're not sweating dropping that all over the place. Vampiric Touch on single target feels fantastic. There's not as much insanity generation as there was in the past, and the pacing of the specs really improved. Cooldowns are really well timed. Again, I still think it's a ton of fun. I think if anyone played with any Shadow Priests at the beginning of the expansion, yeah, they were probably really impressed with where Shadow was. For myself personally, I think you're going to be more impressed. I think it's going to feel smoother to play, and it's still going to be an S tier spec. So I really like what the developers have done here. Now, Marksmanship Hunter. Now, it's extra damage, its cleave isn't really going to be sexy, it's not going to knock anyone away. You're still going to want to press multi-shot regardless of all the changes that the spec scene coming into the season when you're in Mythic Plus. They bring all kinds of really fun hunter utility. Binding shot, you can play around with it a little bit, but truthfully, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on marksmanship. It's a super squishy class. It's not doing really well on the damage meters. It either needs pretty substantial buffs, or we need to reevaluate how it looks. But like, marksmanship's in a C. I did a melee tier list. Ultimately, survival was in a C. Like, it's not a real sexy time for hunters right now. So we got to really kind of step back and figure out what hunters are doing besides being kind of the most chill, casual class there is. But Hunter, C class. Arcane Mage. So Arcane's got a tier set that really just feels, I don't know, counterintuitive to what it is that we're trying to accomplish with our rotation. Really, the rotation is kind of built around a build and spend approach. In Mythic Plus, you're not really standing in one spot building up and shedding abilities. Like, you're constantly in motion. There's a lot of activities that are going on, or stuns that you need to take advantage of. I don't know. I feel like Arcane requires a really high skill set to maximize it. For rating, I can see how it could definitely be in the competition for like a B tier. But for myself, like Arcane, I've played around with it a little bit, and I'm not going to touch it in 10.1. I'm going to give it the thanks, but no thanks approach, and that's dropping all the way down into D. Up next, this is going to be a little bit more uplifting. So Beast Mastery. Beast Mastery is getting a nice damage buff right across the board from its 2-piece tier set. And the 4-piece set gives it more damage. So we're going to continue to see Beastmaster damage increase as the number and complexity of keys go up. Beast Mastery still has some of the best single target damage in the game right now. It always really surprises me how Beastmaster does, but Survival and Marksmanship doesn't. From a Mythic Plus perspective, that's okay. Like, honestly, like, if you play a geared hunter, certainly a Beastmaster hunter, you're feeling I'll say a little bit tanky compared to a few of these ranged classes that are up there. You've got Survival of the Fittest, you've got Turtle, you've got Fortified. There's a whole lot of utility that Marksmanship brings. You usually have a Lust that comes with it. Like, there's more upside than downside with Beast Mastery. I see BM as a solid B tier. I know I'm being a little harsh on Hunters here today, but they're not necessarily topping the meter, certainly not in any kind of super competitive way. But we'll keep playing and seeing how this plays out. Now up next, we're going to speak about the Destro lock, and I can't wait to talk about locks. So, the Destro tier set, it's a little weird, but people are absolutely sleeping on the fire damage for Destro. There's a massive amount of AoE from large pulls that Destro can just absolutely capitalize on. It struggles to keep up with smaller pulls, like I'm thinking about Freehold. There's going to be smaller pulls, basically just due to the routing of the dungeon. But the class is super tanky. It's pumping out a ton of damage, provides skip portals, has infernal stuns, it's got its lock candy. I think it brings a whole bunch to your Mythic Plus group. For me, Destro, I'm putting at the top of A tier. And finally, if you've been keeping an eye down below, we've got one more spec to talk about, and that's the Demonology Warlock. So Demonology, everybody was talking about it. The hype train really started to build here as the P tier was under development. Basically having all of your cooldowns on a 1.5 minute rotation and having both cooldowns up at the same time feels fantastic. Having all of your demons buffed at the same time and your tyrant just pumping out major damage feels really rewarding. And there's nothing better than feeling the excitement that comes with a build like this. They're going to pop insane damage. They're going to bring the Hellstone, the portal utility, everything that Destro did. They're actually putting up a little bit more damage. And I just think from a pure fun factor, Demonology is going to slip into the top of the A tier for me. So that's kind of where I see us standing, folks, for the most part. Let me know. Did you have different thoughts on the season? Yeah, ultimately, Arcane Mage, Affliction, Marksmanship, Beast Mastery, Frost, A tier, Demo, Destro, Devastation, Fire, Balance, Elemental, Shaman. Like, there's something to play all across the board here. So I think it's going to be another fantastic season. I hope you all have a lot of fun with what's coming down the chute. And let me know if there's anything additional that I missed, that I got totally wrong, or that I should do better. Alright, if you liked it, or if you made it this far in the video, hit subscribe, hit like, leave a comment. It helps me out. It costs you $0, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.